Welcome to the Raising Confident Girls podcast, your guide to raising strong, confident daughters. I'm Melissa Jones, the founder of Girls Positivity Club and a teacher for over 20 years. In a world where girls often feel overwhelmed, anxious, and confused, this podcast is your go-to space. As caregivers, we navigate challenges together. I founded Girls Positivity Club to provide a place where you belong and get the tools to face today's hurdles. Consider this your regular check-in with a trusted friend, offering insights and practical tips for meaningful conversations. I'm here to help you feel confident on this journey of raising a generation of empowered girls. Let's dive in and raise those confident girls together. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Raising Confident Girls. I'm so happy to be here with you today because I am solo. It has been a month now since I've done a solo episode, and I love our new format of having guests and experts come in and be guests on the show because I think that gives it another perspective and more insight for how we can raise confident girls. Because if you listen to this podcast, whether it's your first time or you've been here lots of times, you also believe that raising confident girls will change the world. And so I hope that the guests that I've been bringing in lately have opened your mind to new topics, other voices, because I know I'm not certainly the only voice who has ideas about these topics. And I love bringing people in who have their own perspective of raising girls and also whatever their area of expertise is, that they can share that with you. So I am going to talk with you today, though, about something that we all need, and that is empowering our girls, our daughters, through every stage of their life. And so I'm going to share with you today 5 essential ways to evolve your parenting, because I know as a parent, I am definitely not perfect, and I am always evolving and changing and learning and growing just like our girls are. So before we get too deep into the episode, I wanted to, of course, thank you for being here and also say that if you are finding value in these episodes, the biggest compliment would be for you to send it to another mom, parent, caregiver of a girl that this could help, because that's really what this is all about, is getting this free content out to as many people as possible. That's always my intention behind showing up on social media, doing the TV segments that I do, and doing this podcast. Like, it's always to help empower you to raise those confident girls and to help you along the way. I want to be a person in your corner who you can count on and trust, and who's learning also as I'm working with girls more and more over the years and sharing all of my knowledge as a teacher, as a parent, as a woman, as a girl, all of it. So I hope that this is helpful, and that would really, really just mean the world if you would just send it to a parent or caregiver of a girl so that it can help them and help their daughters. My main goal is to create a ripple effect in the world to help as many people as possible who want to have positive impact on girls' lives. So just so you know, that's always the intention behind anything that I do. So today I want to talk with you about empowering the girls in your life at different stages, because the truth is they're going to need us in different ways as they grow up. So, if I think about my own growing up and my mom and dad, the way that they raised me, I think about riding my bike. Obviously, riding a bike is something that is a rite of passage as a child. And even if you have a child with disabilities, there are also bikes and ways to do that. But I'm just talking generally about a bike ride. And I think about my mom and dad always telling me like the different boundaries and the different stages that I had in my bike riding life. So over time, it just started out as me being able to ride my bike by myself once I learned how to ride to the neighbors' houses and back. I think about these two. So our house, we lived in a suburb in Indianapolis, and I think about our house being anchored between other houses. And so my mom and dad would let me ride my bike by myself to the neighbor's house and back to the other neighbor's house and back. And that was my boundary. But over time, my route expanded. So eventually I was able to go to the stop sign and back, where my parents couldn't really see me beyond a certain point of our neighbors because we had trees that blocked their view. And then even going around the block, we have what we called the short block and the long block. And so I was allowed at some time in my life to go around the short block by myself without any adult supervision. That was like a really big deal and a rite of passage. And then that went to the bigger block, which was a bigger part of our neighborhood where I was farther away for longer. I was maybe gone for an hour or so. And, even just crossing roads in our neighborhood, trusting me that I knew how to look both ways. And they gave me all the guidance of how to do that. And then after I was able to do the long block, then I was able to go to my friend's house on the other side of our neighborhood, and so on and so on. So if you think about this with parenting, it's like each step built my confidence and showed me as I grew that my parents trusted me, they gave me more freedoms. And that's really what we're trying to do. Is it would be really nice to be able to follow them around and protect them with every stage of their life, but that's just not realistic. And obviously they go to school or they go away from us at some time, at some point in their lives and their development. And we are trying to instill in them all of the internal talk, the tools, the values, all the things that you believe that you want your daughter to be equipped with. And then the main goal, right, is to have them be an independent young woman as she's growing up, and take these tools with them and take all of the things that we teach them with them. And yes, we know they're going to have bumps. They're going to fall off their bike, if you will. They're going to scratch their knee. They're going to accidentally not look both ways one time and get a little scare or whatever it is. So in using the bike metaphor, just thinking about like that's part of life. And what we eventually want is for them to be able to be independent without us. And of course, we'll always be there as a support to them. But the goal for all of parenting is for them to leave the nest and become the adults that they're going to be and the best versions of themselves, even though, again, they're not going to be perfect. But, that's really what it's all about. And so, like the bike ride, our parenting should evolve and change as our daughters grow. So today's episode is all about 5 action steps that you can take and adapt your own way of doing it. These are always just suggestions, and you always just can adapt it in a way that works best for your daughter, for your family, because I don't know you personally necessarily or your daughter. And so it's always with the intention of like, you have to know your daughter well and yourself and what works best with your family. So these are ideas to get you sparked in that direction and just give you a starting ground for doing some of these things in your everyday life to empower your daughter. So whether it's from freedoms that are everyday freedoms in your house or in your neighborhood or within their friendships or navigating social media, it's really helping them build that internal compass for self-respect, for self-love, and feeling good about who they are. So one of the challenges, there are several challenges, as we've talked about lots of times, with girls, and that is one thing is that, 50% of girls have a drop in self-esteem and confidence by the time they are 14. And that is a staggering statistic. And it really bothers me because we can't let that happen, right? And so the intention is to help them and to give them these tools and these tips so that they can build that internal compass, so they can build that self-love and that self-worth along the way. And so some of the challenges are, as parents, we think sometimes when we talk to our girls about things, we give them a one talk, like a big talk about a certain topic. And that really just isn't enough, because as our daughters grow, their needs and challenges change. So what worked in early childhood may not meet her evolving needs as a younger elementary student, and then moving into older elementary or a tween or a teen or a young adult. And so what we want to do is evolve our approaches to fit all of those stages. And so these are some typical evolving challenges. social and physical. So as her world expands, so do her challenges like peer pressure, new friendship, more complex social settings. And then there are, unfortunately, even if you do hold off on giving your daughter social media, there's always going to be shows and things like that that are digital. So they're always going to be, because of technology, even, unless you live off the grid, which probably not since you're listening to this podcast, but with increased exposure to technology and that evolving as they grow up, there needs to be new guidelines with screen time, with social media, with online behavior. And so these are challenges that we're facing, especially as technology and social media is evolving, and who knows what it'll be in 5 years. And hopefully there are more regulations around it and there's more support. And I really hope too that there's a step back from as much dependency on social media and technology, but unfortunately it's not. I am not against social media or technology. I think there are good things about it, but I also think that a lot of us, myself included, can run into like addictive patterns, and we want to protect our daughters and make sure that they are consuming good content and things like that. So that's something that is an ongoing challenge. And then the emotional, it's her feelings and relationships that deepen over time, requiring those updated strategies for ways she can express herself, healthy boundaries. Those are really common challenges with girls. And then, of course, there's friendship and connection. So we want to make sure that they're having strong, positive friendships because that's so critical at all stages of their life. And thinking about how you can help them form and nurture and maintain those healthy relationships and friendships as part of their overall growth. And I'm sorry about my dog in the background. And so this always happens. This is like real life, right? Like you can probably hear my dogs that are walking around, my son that keeps going in and out of our home, which is setting off our doorbell. So I am so sorry to interrupt, but I'm just having like a moment of laughter about that. It's real life, right? And so I will never pretend to be a perfect person or a parent who has a perfect life. And this doorbell that is going off in the background constantly and the dog's making noises is part of mine. And it's a challenge. So getting back to all of it and getting to the tips. So here are 5 ways that you can evolve your parenting. And that is number 1, having ongoing age appropriate conversations. So keeping the dialogue open as your daughter grows. And so that's ensuring that you're talking about friendships, feelings, everyday challenges that they're facing. And so I want to give you some examples of how that can sound and how that can look. So, for example, an everyday example for a young child, this would be ages 6 to 8. And now these are all going to be relative because you can have these conversations in different ways at different ages, but this is typically how it would sound and how it could look. So at bedtime, it's like using those simple affirmations like, I love you, you're safe, building that foundation of trust. And it's like Alex said in the last week's episode, is like, having that bedtime routine that reminds them of who they are and all of their good qualities. And then maybe it is having a conversation about what made you feel great today. Just putting in those kinds of conversation starters are really powerful. And then as they get a little bit older, you can, even during breakfast or car rides, ask simple questions about her day, like what made her feel happy, or did anything make you feel sad at school today, or was anything frustrating, and what is a way that you helped someone else today, or it was a way you were kind today. Those are all really good things to say when they are in that primary age of childhood. And then as they're getting older, this is that 9 to 11 age. A lot of people will call it like an older elementary or intermediate age. It's like initiating conversations about friendship dynamics and what she's excited about learning. So it's like asking, what was the best part of your day? What made you feel proud today? Or were there any challenges today? Or is there anything that felt a little bit hard today? Something like that. So that's where you can start opening those things up and they build off of each other. And I will also want to be clear that if you've not done these things regularly and you're like, man, I really need that in our routine, that it's never too late. You can always incorporate it. And what I hear so often from parents is that in the car or at bedtime are typically the best times to talk about these things because there's no pressure. You're normally sitting beside each other, or if you have younger children, they're in the back seat. And it just is an easy thing to do, is to talk to them at these times. And then I know that Alicia Crespin, who talked to us about the talk and talking to them about tough topics, she said that going on a walk with her daughter is something that is really a good time for them to talk about things. So just thinking about, like, where would I do this with my daughter? Like, when is the best time that she's the most receptive to talking and checking in? And then if you think about middle school age, this is typically where they start to pull back from you and they start to express that they want more independence. They want to be alone. It can create this like panic. As a mom of a teenager who's almost 17 tomorrow, actually, I've been through this stage where it's like they don't really want us by their side necessarily all the time, but also they do. So it's discussing issues with them, and same thing, like thinking about what is the best time, when are they open, and really it's hard to tell sometimes at that age because they're trying to pull back and have more alone time or quiet time or time with their friends or whatever that would be. So it's asking, like, have you can ask those deeper questions like, how are your friendships going? And it's more open ended to where, how are you feeling in school? Are you with the workload, especially if you have a daughter who is definitely an overachiever or like a high achieving girl who tends to put a lot of pressure on herself? Or if you know that she's just really trying to find her people in school, like, how are you feeling about your friends in your classes and things like that? Um, and also, you can ask those deeper questions that are, I wouldn't lead with this, but saying, like, have you ever felt like you weren't enough in a certain situation? Or what do you think would help you feel more confident? How can I support you in your confidence? If you notice that they're having a dip in their confidence, or they're expressing to you that they're not feeling as confident, or you can just kind of tell because you know your kids, right? And it's not being afraid to have these hard conversations with them, and also knowing that you may not get the answer that you're looking for. They might give you an I don't know, and it's okay because they may not know how to express it, or they might feel embarrassed, or they might feel like they don't know for sure, or they don't want to talk about it because it feels too uncomfortable. But it's continuing to trying to talk to them about it, about all of these things. At different times, and just feeling out like when that might work, when they might be more open to it. And then as they're getting older, that 15 to 18 age, they're really wanting to have their independence. They want to be treated as adults, but they're not adults yet. They're wanting adult privileges, but they're not adults. So they're also learning to drive at these ages and really wanting more time with their friends or their partner, whoever they're dating. They might start having crushes. They might, I mean, this could obviously happen earlier, but they might start dating, like real dating. They call it dating when they're younger, but really it just means that they say they're boyfriend and girlfriend and they don't even go anywhere, right? So it's like back in my day in the 90s, it was like you're going out with someone, but you never go anywhere. You just say that you're going out, which just means you're boyfriend and girlfriend. So however that's worded with your daughter, there are different stages of that, obviously, but you also want to create those honest talk times. And this could be watching TV together and something comes up on a show. And, that was something that Alicia Crespin a couple episodes ago talked about, with using shows that they watch to spark conversation. And you might get shut down sometimes, or they might open up, but it's good to find those common ways of connecting and talking with them about it. Even song lyrics she mentioned, which is really helpful. Also asking them their future goals without it being like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because I know as having a teenager and talking with his girlfriend, there's a lot of pressure on them with at school, they talk so much about future thinking and what do you want to do when you get out of school and all of that. That's already so much in their face that it's like, not in a negative way necessarily. It's helping them kind of see themselves in the future and their future self. But at the same time, there's a stress with I don't have my life figured out and being a little bit concerned about that if they don't know what they want to do or they think they might want to do one thing and then they change their mind and do something else. So it's having those kinds of conversations. And then navigating social media is so huge in this age, in the teen age, because they are snapping their friends on Snapchat. They are on TikTok. They are using other platforms, whatever platform your teen uses. It is their social networking system. So, as much as we wish that this wasn't a thing, it really is because they see it, even people who game, they see it as a connection, like access point. So a lot of times they will use their phones, they'll use social media to talk with one another, to connect, to like each other's posts, things like that, to snap back and forth, whatever that is, to have streaks and all of that. But it's really asking open-ended questions about it and noticing their patterns. So I know that there are parents who have screen limits and screen time, and that is really beautiful. And you can talk about those different things and talk about who they're following. Like instead of only saying to them, like, you're on your phone too much, which yes, they are. I mean, this is a whole thing. You have to shut it down. And sometimes it causes like a big fight because to them it seems like that you're taking away their freedom because it's their way of communicating with their friends and they're not with them. But we are trying to protect them from being addicted to their phones, only living life through a screen. And we want them to go out and be around nature and ride their bike and actually interact with you as a family and play games together and go do things outside of their screens without always having their face in it. And so it's really having those open-ended questions with them about it and asking like, who are you following? Like what are some funny videos that you've seen lately, or who is someone you really admire that you follow? And so it's having those conversations, and that can actually open up a bigger conversation. And especially like I know that my teenager has shown me some videos and I'm like, oh, I don't really completely agree with this. And that causes that kind of conversation, but I'm a little bit careful with like almost like reprimanding, and I use it as a conversation point if I can. Now again, I've also done the opposite and like overreacted or reacted in a way that I maybe shouldn't have, would shut down the conversation, but then I learned from it, right? So the next time I approached it a little differently. And so yeah, it's just having all of these kinds of conversations. So that's tip one, is to have ongoing age appropriate conversations, not just one talk. So it's not like you're going to have one social media talk and then that's the end of it. It's like, no, you're going to have ongoing talks about this. Or it's not like you're going to just have one friendship talk, or you're not going to have just one talk about intimacy and sex. You're going to have multiple, hopefully. And I hope that if you haven't listened to that episode, please go back and listen. That Alicia Crespin is like, we've got to have on all these topics, just ongoing conversation with them so that we can evolve as they're evolving and we can stay in touch with them and give them that social support that they need from us as parents, and also having them tell what they're thinking about and how they're feeling about these different things. So that's number one. Tip number two is evolving boundaries as they grow. So, in thinking about my bike ride metaphor example, it's like there are different ways to approach different parts of their development in a way that's kind of like a bike ride. So, in their early childhood, it's kind of like the short, safe rides. Like when my parents would say I could go to the neighbor's house and back, that was a short, safe ride. So it's like that with their physical and social boundaries. So, for example, you're limiting her interactions to a small, familiar circle. So you're probably not just dropping them off at a mall when they're 6 years old. I mean, that's dangerous. And so, it's them having those small familiar circles, whether that's your church, whether it's your clubs or activities that they're in, whether it's family circles or neighborhood friends, whatever that is, that's your familiar circle. And then maybe it's play dates with close friends or family. So when they're younger, you do have that circle that you feel comfortable with. There might be a friend that you're comfortable with them going to their house and maybe even spending the night, and vice versa, because you have an ongoing mutual trust. Maybe you have similar values. Maybe you know the parents well and things like that. So it feels controlled, it feels safe, all of those things. Just like with supervised outings. So maybe you're taking friends to an activity together. Maybe it's to a bounce park, or maybe it's to a park, or whatever that would be. And then it's controlling screen time. So having really clear limits on how much screen time they're allowed to have and cutting it off, and you being very clear about that, and just making sure that it is age appropriate what they're doing and watching online as much as possible. Yes, I know sometimes things slip through, even parental controls, but for the most part, that's really something that is on high priority. And I think that would be at any age, but just as an example of maybe even the kinds of shows that they're watching, or the kinds of movies that they're watching when they're 6 to 8 years old. A PG-13 movie isn't as appropriate for a 6-year-old as it is maybe for a teen. So that is something that we really need to think about with their short, safe rides, if you will, of their physical and social boundaries. And then it's introducing those digital rules of, okay, here's your limit. You get this much screen time a day, and these are the things you're allowed to watch and do. So for my, child, it was PBS Kids. That was a safe thing that they, could watch, could do online, the apps, whatever it would be for you. And that wasn't the only one, but I knew that PBS Kids was a safe and approved thing that they could watch, play, whatever. And so what this does is it helps them develop an early understanding of balance and moderation when you're setting those limits. And then emotional boundaries. If you think about like teaching simple phrases like, I need a break, or I don't like that, or something like that, like whatever your phrases are for how to be assertive and how to set a boundary of like, I don't like that. Also balancing that with like, okay, there are going to be times where you don't necessarily like something, but that's okay. Like there's going to be a thing that you can say, and then also being open to what other people think or do as well, as long as it's a safe thing, and giving examples of what those would be. So this is helping her like recognize when she does need a break, or when she needs time alone, or when she doesn't like something. And maybe she can even say that, like, even saying those I feel statements. I feel sad when you say blank, or I feel left out when this happens. That's a way to express an emotional boundary, or to express themselves emotionally at a young age. And this helps build that internal compass for self-respect, for understanding her personal limits. And it's helping build that intuition, that little voice inside that tells her when she's okay or not okay with something. And then at that primary elementary age, it's really that transitioning into the 9-10 age group is like extending the route. So this is when I could ride my bike to the stop sign and back. Maybe my parents couldn't see me beyond a certain point, but they knew that I knew the boundary, and I came back from the stop sign, and they would, make sure that that was clear. And if I crossed the boundary, they would talk to me about it, and things like that. And so it is with physical and social boundaries with this age approaching, like that 9-year-old age, is allowing her to be in some unsupervised play dates. So maybe it's like there's a bigger friend group, maybe it's a bigger neighborhood friend group, or she's going to a local event. Maybe there's an event at your church, at your community, where you feel safe to drop her off, and maybe you just sit in the parking lot, or maybe you go in but you don't follow her around. And again, this is obviously not a dangerous situation I'm describing. It's something that is a step up from very supervised play dates, is like you going somewhere and letting them have a little bit of freedom. Maybe it's going to a children's museum and you allowing them to kind of roam around in this one area where it's safe and you know where they are, but you're not necessarily following them around. And it is really them expanding their friend group. This would be like riding a bike a bit further, and expanding her world while also ensuring it's still controlled. And so it's also maybe in the neighborhood, like you can go down to this friend's house, which is maybe a little bit further, and she walks by herself. Or I think about a girl who, her mom, they moved to a new part of town, and her daughter wanted to walk with her friend around the block. And so it was that, or walk down to, I don't know, the end of the cul-de-sac or whatever it is, like not a cul-de-sac, but just like a farther distance. And her mom could still see her if she stood on her porch, but she was going further than what she did before. So what that does too is, even with digital things, it's like giving them a little bit of, maybe it's a controlled way. Maybe you allow them to start texting friends, or maybe it is you allow them more apps, or you allow them to start watching a certain thing that's maybe a step up of what they were watching before. Age appropriate, obviously, and whatever you believe in, whatever you allow in your family with that. And so maybe it's giving them more educational apps like, oh, you've done great with this. Now I think you could, start, you've been wanting to do this one game or this app, that now I think you're old enough to do this. And I can't think of a good example right now, but maybe, yeah, giving them a little bit more exploration, still with boundaries. And it's, if it is texting, letting them know that you are going to monitor it and making sure that you talk with them about what is an appropriate thing to text and what do you say on text. And or maybe it's FaceTiming a friend. Maybe that's a digital thing that they're doing, is maybe if they can't see a friend or relative, they're FaceTiming or something. Obviously, I know that in person is best, but it's showing them how to use the tools and how to use the technology in a way that is age appropriate, safe, all of those things. And then emotional boundaries at this age is about encouraging her to express her feelings about friendships, helping her recognize when interactions feel really respectful and kind and supported, and when they feel like they need to speak up about something. They're starting to maybe notice that not everyone is being treated the same, or maybe they're feeling left out at times, or maybe there's a friend who's kind of taking over the friend group and they're noticing that. Or maybe they notice that they have a great friend group, but this other girl doesn't, and they want to help them, whatever that would be. Maybe it's that some friendships are shifting and changing and they're noticing that. So it's just really helping her build her emotional vocabulary and self-awareness with, like, what have you noticed that your friends are doing at recess? Like, do you all play together? What are the kinds of games that you guys are playing? And so then it's really helping her describe what her life is like at school and with friends. What do you enjoy doing with your friends? Are there any new friends that you're hoping to meet or anything like that? So it's really just helping, giving her the vocabulary, and also helping her know how to be assertive and stand up for herself when she notices that something isn't right. Or also it's listening to her friends and not always taking charge and making all the rules, and knowing that friendships aren't going to be perfect, and that's normal. It's also normal to tell your friends how you're really feeling without fear of them not being your friend anymore. And like knowing that if they're true friends, that you can speak to them honestly and they will listen to you. And that arguments are normal and all of these things. So it's helping her express her feelings about these things, and helping her know that these are all normal, and having that internal compass of like, when do I speak up and how do I know when to? And then as they get older into that tween age, where it's 9 to 11, moving into 12, it's allowing her more freedom. So this would be like in the bike example, me riding around the block. So this might be more freedom in her neighborhood, if that's safe. It might be biking or walking to a friend's house nearby, with clear guidelines, like checking in, calling, having designated meeting spots. It might be walking with a friend um, around the block or something. It might be making sure that she is really going where she says she's going. It's her proving that she can be trusted in those certain situations. Maybe again, it's being dropped off at a safe event together, and you maybe even stepping back further, whatever that would be, compared to when they were a little bit younger. So giving them a little bit more freedom. And then it's setting those digital clear boundaries of online behavior. This is typically when group chats start. And so it's teaching etiquette of group chats, how to speak up in group chats, how to delete a group chat. And that this is something that came up in a conversation with some girls that were 11, 12. So it's at the later age where they start to really be interested in more social dynamics and maybe commenting on things on social media if they're allowed to do that, or maybe it's having a social media account, but it's very um, it's monitored by parents, and it's asking permission when they post things like, mom, is it okay if I post myself playing soccer, or is it okay if I post myself with my friends, or whatever it would be, or how do I comment on people's things, or and then it's that balance of like, okay, not being obsessive about it. And so it starts to open up that whole world. And so if you're not ready for it at this age, I strongly recommend not doing it, but also not avoiding it at the same time. Meaning, if they're not quite ready for that, it's also starting to teach them about it, and like, how do you interact with people online, even if it's in a game? Like, how do you talk when you're doing a game and you might play with a friend who's in a different part of the world? Or if it's a lot of girls will play like Roblox or something like that, and that's a safe game, but there can be ways that they can play with their friends. It doesn't mean they have to be open to the public world where some stranger can talk to them, because that can be dangerous. But maybe it's allowing them to have chats going with their friends in a video game, and like, how does that sound? What do you talk about? What do you do? And so it's really teaching them as they go, because I think we assume that they know all of these things, but it's noticing their interaction and like what they're into and digitally, and how that's looking for them, and then helping guide them through like, how do I appropriately use this tool? And again, how do I set limits with them where they're not obsessed about it, and that's not all that they're doing? They're also getting outside, they're also playing with friends, they're also doing other things, listening to music, doing their hobbies, things like that. And then it's those emotional boundaries of encouraging those discussions about peer pressure, because peer pressure starts to come into play. Like, it can come in later, but especially at this 9 to 11 age, it's really encouraging discussions about it's okay to set limits with friends, like if they do something you don't like. Or a lot of times at this age, it's who hangs out with who when, and it's okay to say no when you're uncomfortable with something, or to walk away from uncomfortable situations. Because if they're doing it at recess at a younger age, it's going to set them up for when they're at high school and they show up to something and there are people there doing things that they don't feel comfortable with or agree with. And it's giving them that muscle early to where they leave the situation, or they speak up about it and say, I'm not okay with that. And so again, it's helping her build that internal voice, that internal compass is like, am I okay with this? And I see this a lot with girls with exclusion of other girls. So it's like, oh, she's weird, I don't want to invite her to come over and sit with us. Or I used to like her, but all of a sudden she's like this. And so it's when gossip starts, or it's when a lot of people call it girl drama, where one girl will be friends with the girl during the day, like the first part of the day, and then there's some kind of a fight at recess. It's normally about friendship, or it can sometimes be about crushes or sharing private information with other people that she didn't think that she would do, and just things like that. And so it's helping her know how to say no and when to walk away from uncomfortable situations, and expressing herself, like not being afraid to speak up and be assertive about it. And so this is going to help her create those respectful relationships. This is going to help her know what she's okay with and what she's not. This is where your family values come into play, and you can help her establish that. Like, what are you okay with your friends? And when do you consider a friend crossing the line in certain things? And then when they move into the middle school age, that tends to be that pullback age where they start to really be independent. Parents all of a sudden become annoying. And this is when they start to really start that process of spreading their wings a little bit. And because they're not a young child anymore, but they're not an older teen. So they're in that in between. That's why they always call it like the tween years. Um, and then moving into the actual teen years, but the younger ones, if that makes sense. Um, so it's exploring those new routes and those new check ins. So, like me going around the larger block or checking in different ways. So, socially, it's having more complex social settings like school dances. This is when school dances start happening. This is when maybe larger group activities can happen. This is where maybe unsupervised outings can happen, where they are doing something like they start to want to go to a football game and just be with their friends. Maybe you still go, but you don't sit right with them, or they want to go to a movie, but maybe they go with their friend to a different movie than you do, and they sit in the theater alone. You're still there, but they're just wanting a little bit more independence. Maybe this is going to a mall and you having a few stores nearby that they can go to, but they can't cross a certain boundary. So this isn't like dropping them off at the mall and they're walking around and things like that. This is more, it is like a step down from that, whatever you're comfortable with. And it's setting those clear check-in times. Maybe it's them going down to the park for a while, but they do have a phone, so that you can communicate with them when you're not with them. And so it's having a curfew, having a time where they have to be back. Maybe it's going down to a friend's house and then they have to be back by a certain time. And so maybe it's a longer bike ride. Maybe it's just different environments that they're exploring with guidance, while learning to balance that fun and responsibility of really getting into that older kid age. And this starts to feel very uncomfortable because you're like, I want them to be safe at any age. Of course, you want your kids to be safe and you want to be there all the time. But this is like starting to step back a little bit. And maybe it's whatever community you're comfortable with. Maybe it's a church youth group and you drop them off at a certain activity, maybe, or maybe it's a sporting event, or maybe it is not like a stadium, but just like a local sports team. Maybe it's a gathering of like a neighborhood gathering of some kind, whatever that would be for you. And then those digital boundaries continue to be a thing where it's maybe social media use, maybe it's privacy settings, maybe it's, again, group chats and establishing like what's appropriate to say in a group chat and what is not, what's appropriate to comment on someone's feed and what's not. It's sharing appropriate content. It's regular discussions about online experiences, like what's happening online. Like, are there any accounts that you follow that are not making you feel positive about your body or about you or about your friendships? Is everybody being kind? In your friend group online, or are you noticing that there are some things being said? So a lot of times kids who don't have these conversations with their parents will comment inappropriate things, or they'll put someone down, and maybe your daughter isn't really in on it, but she witnesses it and she isn't sure what to do. And so vaping also starts happening for some kids in middle school, and smoking, and there can be some drug use that starts. And so obviously you want to protect her, and there are things that happen in the bathrooms at schools because bathrooms can't be monitored as closely. And so it's making her aware of those things as she's getting older into those high school years, especially. And this isn't to scare you. This is real. And it doesn't mean that they go to a rough high school or anything like that. Like, this happens across the country and in the world. Like, these things are going to happen. And as much as we want to shield them from all of it, and wish that they would never see someone vaping, or never see someone smoking, or never see someone cursing, or whatever it would be, those things are going to come up. And it's equipping them to know how to handle the situations. And it's having these ongoing, like, what are you okay with? What bothers you about that? What would you do if one of your friends did something like that? What would you do if you saw someone doing? Would you tell? Would you feel like a snitch if you did, or whatever it would be? So it's really not only in person, but it's also helping them know that about the digital world too. It's like, what would you not be okay with as a comment, or like someone's picture that's floating around that's an inappropriate picture, or it's something that just is mean, happening. Like, how would you respond to something like that? And so it's talking about how to handle those things and how to have healthy friendships. Like, do you feel good when you're with your friends digitally and in person? Or is there a group chat that's not making you feel good? You can leave that chat, you can delete it, you can block that person, whatever that would be. And then as you move into high school age, it's continuing those conversations. It's like the longer rides, if you will, on the bike with greater independence. So it's allowing her more autonomy in like planning outings or attending regular social events, or setting mutually agreed upon rules like curfews, regular check-ins, clear expectations. And they're not going to agree with all those things. Like, there are going to be times where they hate it and they think it's unfair and they think they're being treated like a baby, and their friends get to stay out longer than them, or their friends can have a later bedtime than them, and their friends are allowed to do this and that, but they're not. That's typically what comes up in high school. And so it's just having those regular conversations. And it's also being okay with the door slams and the eye rolls and things like that. Even if you have a very respectful child, those things are going to come up when they're told no about something, or when they feel like they're being unfairly treated, or a sibling is being treated differently than them because they're older or younger, or whatever that would be. And so it's just making sure that you're having those check-ins and there's conversations about those boundaries. And then they're not going to like the digital boundaries when they're in high school, because they think that they can manage it on their own and they don't need you to do that for them anymore. They feel like they know what to do. And they, when you say things like this to them, like, remember, when you are commenting on someone's feed, everybody can see it. It stays there forever. Whatever you post, it always stays there. And they're like, I know. And it's a lot of like just showing them and supporting them, that in ways that, same thing, like they're noticing that internal compass of like, this feels right, this doesn't feel right. And understanding that there has to be a balance in your life. Like, if you're always on your phone and you're never having interactions with people, like real conversations face to face, or you're only talking to people digitally, like, we want you to also interact with our family. We also want to do things together as a family still. Maybe we want to go out to dinner once a week, or we want to have family dinner at home, or we want to just do something together where we're connecting in some way. Even though they're going to really want to mainly be with their friends, they still do want family time too, even though they may not always admit that. And as she matures, she needs to learn how to navigate the digital world. Like, it's an ongoing conversation, and just really asking her to check in with herself about it, and saying things like still having limits, but saying things like, does it make you feel good to follow these certain people? And no one can see if you unfollow them, or if you block someone. It's not going to give them an alert that you block them or that you unfollowed them or whatever it is. So just making sure that you're having those ongoing conversations. And then it's building that emotional and relational boundary of deeper conversations about what a healthy relationship looks like, especially as they start dating. And the friendships, like checking in about friendships. Do you feel good when you're around your friends? How to handle conflicts. And one of the number one things that I hear from girls in middle school and high school is they are terrified that if they speak up and express that they don't like something a friend is doing, that friend will abandon them and they'll be alone and they won't have any friends. And so what I encourage girls to do is to say it in a kind way. Say, like, I feel left out when, or I feel uncomfortable when, and just say those things. Because if we're not teaching our girls that they can speak up with their friends, they're not going to speak up in situations when it really counts. And as their friends, they should be their safe people. And if they're feeling emotionally unsafe with friends, they're not the right crowd for them. And they need to find a group that is accepting, where you can talk about real things and you can be honest about how you're feeling about things, even if you aren't sure how to react to it, because a true friend will always accept you, even if they don't always agree with every single thing you say. They will respect the fact that you have an agreement as friends to be there for each other and talk about hard things or support each other through conflict, and know that you can come back together, and that part of friendship is going through, yes, all the good times, but also having times where you need to talk maybe about certain things that may feel a little bit uncomfortable. And that's okay, because that's what friends do. You talk about the good things and you can talk about challenges you have, and without worrying about that they're going to spread it all over the place or things like that. Like having those common agreements with friends, having boundaries of friends about these things are private that I tell you. I don't want this to be told to other people. Can I trust my friends? All of these things are really, really important. And you checking in with how they're feeling about their friendships is crucial, even especially in high school. And I would argue all through their growing up is checking in with them, because their friendships are really important to them. So then, if you go on to our third tip, that is really helping them with that internal self talk, that positive self talk. And that's helping them build daily affirmations to build their confidence. So for a younger child, this would be having them say positive things to themselves at a young age. You can do this very young, like, I am loved, I am smart, I am strong. And you telling them those things, like, you are loved, you are strong, you are smart. So it's helping them internalize those things. And then as they get older, it's, I'm so proud of you for sharing your drawing with me, or I'm a big fan of praising effort. It's really showing them that we're proud of them for not only their achievements and accomplishments, but of the hard work they put into things, the effort they put into things, the effort that goes into even taking risks that are healthy risks. And it's also helping them notice that in themselves and saying, what are you proud of about yourself today? What is something that you've done lately that's made you feel really proud of yourself? And it's really helping them recognize that, or also recognizing it in others. What is something they're proud of in your friends this week, or today? Has any of your friends, have they done anything that's made you really proud to be their friend? And that's really helping them see the good in others too, which is really important. And then as they're getting older, it's, you did a great job on your project today. I really love that you kept with it, you use colorful pictures, whatever that would be. And again, praising that effort, and then noticing in others, or asking them what they notice about other people's projects, and also instilling in them that someone else can be good at something too. It's not a competition, it's about supporting other girls. And I'm such a big proponent of that, is like, what did you notice that they did really well, and helping them identify that, and without being jealous of it or without seeing it as competition. And then in middle school, it's like telling them that their ideas matter and that you value their thinking. I would argue that you do that all throughout their growing up too, but especially in middle school, it's more like your ideas matter and you're really talented at this thing, or you're putting in a lot of effort. And it's really focusing on their positive qualities and not only on their physical attributes or how beautiful they look or how smart they are and things like that. It's more like their other character qualities. So you were really kind when you did this. You were really strong when you did this, and helping them notice and then asking them to tell you some things would be really powerful and important. And then at high school, it's maybe at bedtime checking in and like reinforcing her self image with things like, same thing. You're strong, you're creative, you're kind. Like Alex said in the last episode, you were strong, creative, and kind. You were a brilliant mind. Like having those little things, like they would probably say that's super cringe, or like they think it's too cheesy to say something like that, but you could do it in your own way where it's like, just noticing good things about them. We can't say that enough. And it's also helping them recognize something good about themselves in that day too. Even if the day doesn't go well, like what's something that you can be proud of today, or what's something that was a good quality of yourself today, whatever that would be. And it's just once you build these things into their routine, they're going to get really used to thinking that way about themselves. And it doesn't mean that they don't see things that they should improve or could improve. And you can also put those things in. But if we're really talking about building their internal self talk and the positive self talk, it's not ignoring the things that are hard. It's obviously talking about that too, but it's about helping them and having them recognize their good things and talking about those things with you out loud as a habit. And then the fourth one is to encourage that self discovery through everyday activities. So it's as a young child, maybe them discovering new activities they want to try. Maybe it's art supplies, getting out different types of art supplies. Maybe it's puzzles. Maybe it's different types of books that you read together or that they read. Maybe it's unstructured play where they can explore and see what sparks their interest. And so it's kind of like sampling different flavors of ice cream, as a young child. And I would argue that all through growing up, they're really trying different flavors, if you will, of like different things that they like to do. And they're discovering new favorites all the time. And those things can change all the time. Or some of the things are going to be a through line and they're going to always be there. And then as they're getting older in that primary age, it's enrolling them in a fun, like local art class or music class or community event. And then asking them after to be reflective is like, what did you enjoy about that? Or would you enjoy about that club or that camp today? And just like with a favorite hobby with a friend, you're going to introduce her to new experiences that ignite a new passion, maybe. And maybe it's trying something with a friend that is, a new kind of sculpture class or an art class or whatever she's into. Maybe it's a new sport. Maybe it's an acting class, whatever that would be for your daughter. And as they're getting older, it's encouraging them to join a club, plug for Girls Positivity Club, or any kind of a plug that sparks their interest, youth group or anything like that, a sports team, drama, robotics, like discussing what she learns about herself through these things. And there are going to be things that hit and things that miss when they take these classes. Some things they're going to be like, yeah, I liked that. Maybe it's a cooking class. Maybe I liked that. But I want to try something different. So there's nothing wrong with trying something and then exploring something else. And then maybe you go back to that one thing, or maybe you just keep trying different things for variety. Some kids like to just stick with one type of thing and go deep into it, and others like to try other things and they kind of dabble in a lot of different things. So it's helping them express their just different interests and explore that as they're getting older too. So it's kind of like exploring a new territory of their interests that they like. And then as they're moving into that middle school age, they can maybe start keeping a journal and start a bigger creative project like a scrapbook or like a digital way of capturing their thoughts or their experiences. This could be having like a cork board or a bulletin board in their room, or like a wall where they can start putting things up that they care about or that they're interested in. So it could be a wall of some kind that's dedicated to things that they're really into at that time, however that would be for them. And so it's keeping them just active with, how am I liking this? And how do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to go deeper into it? Do I want to try something different? And it's, having them jot things down is like reflecting in a personal journal. Some people don't love a journal. There might be another way that she could express herself. Maybe she makes little videos. I don't know. And it doesn't mean she has to post them, but maybe she creates a vlog of things that she did each day. Some girls love vlogging. And so it's creating that video blog. And so just asking her, like, how would you like to express yourself? Like, what makes you feel good about that? I've had girls who have wanted to express themselves using Lego, and some through cooking, some through art, some through sports, like whatever that is for them. And some girls like to have a variety of things. So it's just helping her explore that. And then maybe in high school, she's taking on more complex projects. Maybe she's volunteering for a cause that she cares about, or engaging in like some advanced classes. Maybe this is an advanced dance class, an advanced art class, advanced cheerleading, advanced robotics, advanced STEM something. Or maybe she loves researching, and maybe it's being part of a research project at school. Or maybe she is really into animals and she wants to go volunteer or work as an intern at a zoo, whatever that would be. There's always a way to really challenge her in that area and help her get involved in her interest in a deeper way as she's getting older into that high school and older teen age. And it's also you engaging in regular discussions with her about what these experiences mean to her. Like, what are you learning from this? And what are you enjoying? And what are you not enjoying? And what would you do differently? Or what do you want to keep doing more of? And so, much like for you, you might be exploring your own personal development or professional development if you're in a certain area in your career where you're going deeper in some area, or a hobby. Like you might have a hobby that you're going deep into, and it's helping her really refine that and discover her passions and go deeper as she's getting older. Or it might be trying something for the first time that she didn't know she wanted to do, but maybe she's trying it out as she's even in an older age. And then the last one is building a multi-generational support network for her. So this is, I love the example that Alex gave in our last podcast of imagine a table. Who would you want sitting at that table with your daughter? Meaning, who are the mentors in her life that are from different ages and stages of her life? So in the younger child age, maybe sitting around your table are going to be more like immediate family members, like grandparents, aunts, uncles, um, and family friends. Maybe these are going to be the people at her table. Maybe it is like having a close circle of friends who always cheer you on. If you think of it this way, these are the people around the table that are always going to be cheering your daughter or your kids on. So, who are those people in their lives? And do they have regular contact with them? And so just creating that loving base is, thinking about that as a young child. And then as she gets older, it's maybe you invite a trusted teacher to that table, or a coach or a neighbor who can provide that positive reinforcement and share their own childhood experiences. And they're a positive and trusted person in your daughter's life. And so if you think about like maybe at this primary age, you think of it as a mentor. Who are her mentors sitting at the table? And who are the mentors in your life? Who are the people who've helped shape you? And these kinds of adults in your daughter's life are really crucial and important. And there are going to be some people sitting at your daughter's table as mentors who are always going to be there. And then there are going to be people who change seats. Maybe there's a certain coach that comes in that's like a huge influence on her life and who wasn't maybe there in her younger days. Or maybe it's just for a certain time and then they move on from that team, and maybe it's someone else who steps in as a trusted adult. Maybe it's someone who is a close friend of yours who is really becomes a good mentor to her. And then as they're getting older, it's community figures, like who are people that she looks up to, who are positive people in the community, or maybe they are famous people who have a good influence. So maybe it's a singer who is a good influence, or maybe it's a leader in a different way. Maybe it's a person at your church or at your synagogue or whatever, wherever you go, who is a leader in that way in her life. Maybe a spiritual leader. Maybe it's a family friend who has faced similar challenges than your daughter if she's going through a certain challenge. Or maybe it's an influencer who is a positive voice, because there are good ones out there. Any kind of a mentor. Maybe it's an author that she really loves, or maybe it's an actor or someone who just could have a positive influence on her life in some way. Maybe it's a singer, like I said, a performer in some way who really believes in positive, good things that is aligned with what you value as a family. And in middle school, it's really facilitating those connections with the role models through school clubs, through local youth programs, through them maybe even informally meeting up with a mentor. I know for me, I mentor girls one-to-one, and I take pride in that. Like, I really care about these girls, and I want to be that mentor for them, that voice for them that really helps them through their challenges and supports them through their good things. And I see myself as a partner with parents. So who would partner with you to mentor your daughter? And it doesn't necessarily mean that they need to do one-to-one, but it could be a club that your daughter's in, or it could be some kind of a group or whatever that would be. And it's getting them around those people that are positive, good influences on her life besides you. It's like widening that table a little bit, or inviting new people to join the table. It's enhancing your parent and child bond. It's having that ongoing communication that deepens your trust and keeps your connection strong. It's ensuring that she feels seen and heard. So these are the positive outcomes that are going to come with this. It's empowering her self-identity. So it's helping her with those clear, evolving boundaries. It's doing those daily affirmations, those opportunities of self-discovery, that your daughter develops that internal compass that guides her through life. And all of these things are going to give her that lifelong success. The everyday strategies are like a foundation for academic achievement, for healthy relationships, for confidence to go for her dreams and handle any kind of a challenge or setback at any age. And so I want you just to remember these things. Number one, have an ongoing age-appropriate conversations with her. Number two, having those evolving boundaries and think of it like as the bike metaphor that I gave you for everyday freedoms. Like, what do those look like for you? It's number three, building those daily affirmations to boost her confidence. Number four is encouraging that self-discovery through everyday activities, and those evolving as she evolves in her interest and the people that she wants to be around too. And then the fifth is to build that multi-generational support network. Those people, like, think about who you want sitting around the table of your daughter's life at those different stages. And again, there are going to be people that stay there the whole time, and then there are going to be people that move in and out. And it's really about working together to help her be the best that she can be and supporting her in the most ways. Because although we'd want to be all things to our kids, we can't be all things to them. And we need other people around us supporting us. And so I hope I'm that person for you. And I hope that this creates a ripple effect and helps you and your daughter connect, and really just empowers both of you to feel really good about all of these stages. And again, it's not going to come perfectly. It's not always going to go a certain way, but it's about adapting and, just repairing when things don't go well, and picking up the pieces when it needs to, and adjusting and trying something new and coming back together, because we always want to be there for our kids. And our daughters especially are going through different challenges than we did when we were growing up. And so I hope that this was helpful for you. And so try one or two of these things this week and share these experiences. Or if you have questions for me, I'd love to hear from you. You can either email me, or you can reach out directly on social media and just send me a message. I'd love to hear from you and support you. And I want to remind you that, this is a journey. Like, every small, thoughtful adjustment and boundaries, communication, any of this empowers your daughter to grow into the confident, independent young woman she is meant to be. And I'm so grateful for you being here today. I hope you have a great week ahead. Try one of these things. Please send this to someone that could help. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, keep raising those confident girls. You're doing great. Thanks for joining another empowering episode of the Raising Confident Girls podcast. Share today's insights with caregivers and friends, building beautiful relationships with strong girls. Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're not just a podcast, we're a community. Follow Girls Positivity Club on social media for more empowering content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. This podcast empowers you, supporting incredible girls. Let's create strong, beautiful relationships with the girls in our lives. I appreciate you listening today. Stay confident, stay connected. Until next time, keep raising those confident girls. You've got this.